Painting, sculpture, cinema. These arts come from one source, the reasoning mind. But a lot of art out there is garbage. Some of it, however, is inspiring, like in the Freedom Square, the statue on top of that obelisk. Today you're going to get a lot of art. Think of it as like a Georgian dinner where they keep serving you for like an hour and then they say the hors d'oeuvres and the appetizers are done. So it might be overwhelming. I hope it isn't. But pick and choose what resonates with you and consider it food for your soul. But first, come with me back in time to March 1982, chilly New York City. I'm sitting in my tiny apartment, sipping tea. I get a knock on the door. It's my brother, Damien. He says, "Robert, bad news." "What?" "Ayn Rand died." "No." Now I'll never get to meet her and say thank you. Thank you for giving me the courage to face a lifetime. Has Ayn Rand given anyone the courage to face a lifetime? Yeah. Well, the next day I went to get the New York Times, which had her obituary. And I learned that she lived on East 34th Street. I lived on East 30th Street. I used to go jogging in the neighborhood, and I would come back and tell my sister, "I think I saw Ayn Rand." It was those eyes. And I thought about her philosophy for living on Earth, what that meant to me. The short time frame that I went from being a long-haired singer in a rock band with definitely mixed premises to a young, confident, proud individual with such a promising future. And what is her philosophy for living on Earth? She says it right here. "My philosophy in essence is the concept of man as a heroic being with his own happiness as his moral purpose, with productive achievement as his noblest activity." And today's roadmap has 3 steps that come right from that. Man as a heroic being, happiness as the moral purpose of life, and productive achievement as his noblest activity. So what does Ayn Rand mean when she talks about man? Does she just mean men? No, she means humans. And in today's context, that means you, and you, and you. So you can be a heroic being. Your happiness is the purpose of your life. And your productive activity could be your noblest activity. Your productiveness can be your noblest activity. So what about art? Dramatized art is what we're going to be talking about based on egoism. And this term egoism, what does it mean today? Often people think it means stepping on others to get what you want, or being arrogant and being brash. And in fact, I tried to find like a dictionary.com, a current definition of egoism. And I couldn't find one, so I had to go to my own Oxford English Dictionary. And it says here, if you look at number 2, the theory which regards self-interest as a foundation of morality. And I like on the bottom, as opposed to altruism. So what this means is egoism, which ego comes from I. It means you are the primary, but not the only beneficiary of your actions. If we talk about the arts, we look at Ayn Rand's seminal work on aesthetics in the Romantic Manifesto. She says, "The goal of my writing was a portrayal of the ideal man." Do you think she succeeded? I do. I certainly do. What is that moral ideal? What does it mean to us? It means when we are in a situation that we need some courage to take an action, we can look at that ideal for inspiration. Let's move on now to heroic being. Anybody have heroes that are not Ayn Rand characters? Yeah, let's hear. Jack. Peter Parker. I'm going to talk about him shortly. Yes, Matt. Mr. A. Oh. Anyone else? Yes. Shackleton. Okay. Oh, Shackleton. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. By the way, I just met this man at breakfast, and he is a hero. 1989, the tanks were 20 feet away from him. He stood at Tiananmen Square. And we are going to have a business relationship after today. A lot of coaching business for me. I'm happy. So anyway, heroes. This is one of my first heroes. Actually, no, the most profound hero in my life. But first I'll ask, I'll take you back. So of the arc of heroism in people's life, I'm 5 years old, and just like Jack, well, actually my hero wasn't Peter Parker, it was Spider-Man, because he went from skyscraper to skyscraper in New York City, my own New York City, and he would save the good guys from the bad guys. And the cops didn't like him, the criminals didn't like him, the media didn't like him. It was kind of like one against everyone, and I resonated with that. And then a few years later, I discovered Greek mythology. Achilles, Athena, Apollo, and Prometheus. And their stories fascinated me with what was possible. After that was Lord of the Rings. In 8th grade, my friends, I talked about the book so much, my friends called me Bilbo Baggins Begley. And it was Strider, Aragorn, Frodo, Samwise. And then I met the Ayn Rand hero. This is a different kind of being. Because unlike the others who were in some kind of fantasy, the Ayn Rand hero is in this world. He's an industrialist, an inventor, architect, engineer. And he's someone that functions in this world, so it's a human being, but they have one characteristic that they use more precisely than we see in life. Anyone know what that one characteristic is? Yes, I see Andy saying reason. And Ayn Rand specifically wanted her heroes to use reason to a degree that you don't see in normal life. So in my own life, the sentence I heard more than many other sentences was, Robert, don't be selfish. Whether that was from my 8 siblings, my 2 parents, yes, we had a big Catholic family in a small New York City apartment. Take a moment to visualize that at the dinner table. I heard it in church. I heard it in school. It's wrong to be selfish. Learn to sacrifice. I was like, no, it just doesn't, sacrifice doesn't work for me. I didn't have the answers, but I just felt it's me against this collective, this group, this authority, and I needed to defend myself morally. And that's what happened when I met Howard Rourke in The Fountainhead. A couple of scenes from The Fountainhead that inspired my journey to becoming self-made. The first one is when Rourke is given a commission, the potential for a commission, and the client tells him, if you just make this one little change, this one tiny compromise, the deal is yours. We know you need this. And Rourke looks at the offer and he says, no. And the man says, how could you be so fanatical and selfless? And Rourke takes up his drawings and presses them close to him and says, "That was the most selfish thing you've ever seen a man do." When I read that book for the first time, I closed it and I reflected. And Leopold is going to be talking about the value of reflecting. And I thought, that's the answer. This is what I've been searching for since as far back in time as I could remember. Another scene in The Fountainhead is a description of Rourke. It says, Howard Rourke built a temple to the human spirit. He saw a man as strong, proud, clean, wise, and fearless. He saw a man as a heroic being. So we want to know in the beginning, this is the section we're in, man as a heroic being. This is what we mean. Anyone want to be strong, proud, wise, clean, and fearless? That is the essence of heroism. So how do you turn a 700-page novel, how do you shrink it down to installments in the newspaper? That was the task that King Features syndication took on. They wanted to have The Fountainhead in 30 segments. This is 1945, 2 years after the novel was completed. And Ayn Rand loved the idea because, first of all, it was free advertising. Well, not even free. She got paid for this. But she loved having these illustrations with scenes, short descriptions of the scenes. And one thing she loved most, the illustrator, Frank Godwin's name is, she said, he makes Howard Rourke look like my husband, Frank O'Connor. Wow. So when my dearest Carrie Ann look at this painting, which is by Brian Larson, inspired by The Fountainhead, I rename all the paintings that we have. I give them specific names. And of the many messages in The Fountainhead, one that fits this position and fits me, Howard Rourke says, my work done my way. And for your purposes, you can think your work done your way. That's it with The Fountainhead. Let's move on to heroism on the big screen. Okay? Movie heroes. Anybody have any movie heroes? Let's hear one. Lebowski. Big Lebowski. Yeah. Cheryl Hobbs. Okay. So since 1980, I've had a million heroes. My whole life is based on following heroes. And since 1988, first time I saw this movie, the one figure who towers above anyone else, her name is Kira Argonova from the movie We the Living. And as Marco said, for the past about 2 years, I've been helping producer Duncan Scott with this film, getting it out to a wider audience. And here I want to take the time to thank Ayn Rand Center Europe because they've been helping in this goal of getting the movie seen. So especially Katerina, Isadora, and Alexandra, and the rest of the team, and actually Prometheus, because they've helped to fund this promotion. But I'll just give you one example. Back in September, in Kiev, Duncan Scott and his wife and a few other people went to a screening there, and the attendees were so engrossed in the movie, they said, even if an air raid is happening in the middle of this movie, we will stay in our seats and watch it till the end. So why do I think Kira's an incredible hero? I'll show you a couple of scenes and let you judge for yourself. Oh, we don't have sound. Where are the sound guys? Let me see if I can pause it. Nope. I'll come back. Doesn't it feel harder when there's a technology glitch? It did work before. So I'll just describe for now. There's 3 scenes with Kira, and she's with 3 different men, and she is basically told to compromise and told she has to live a certain way. And for that, she doesn't agree. She is going to act on her own values and um, not be dominated, not be told how to live. Nope. Now it's
Maybe I can just read on the mic.
Yeah, I can actually say that. That's true. We could say she's going to be an engineer. This is an early scene. Let's just do it that way.
Okay. I'm going to be an engineer.
I'm pressing, but now. The famous computer sound.
Oh, yeah, I'm here and ready to help if needed.
Okay, we need to just keep going. So I will just say, yeah, she's saying, I'm going to be an engineer. I'm going to build on the Red Square. And it's the only profession where I don't have to lie. Numbers are numbers, steel is steel. And then he says, engineer, is that a profession for a woman? And she says, child, the uncle says, child, what are you doing in Soviet Russia? And she says, that's what I wonder. She's, in the film, she's 18 years old. Now she's telling her lover what she wants to do. I want to build skyscrapers. Huge bridge made of aluminum, white and shining. The most beautiful building in the world. And he says, child, your bridge sounds beautiful, like a dream. And now there's a big Marxist rally. And she says, when this is all over and every trace of Bolshevism is erased from history, what a glorious funeral march this will be. A funeral march, and then she's interrupted by the GPU chief. And she says, how much are you paid for snooping? And he says, you know, this is not a place for girls like you. And she's like, yeah, this is the place where men like you are not allowed through the back door. And he's realizing she has to be new because he's been following all of these students. And she tells him, be careful when you arrest me because the steps, we live on the 4th floor and the steps are slippery. So you might hurt yourself when you come to arrest me. That is courage. That is incredible amount of courage. And that's one reason I consider Kira a major hero of mine. I have a few other clips, but if we miss them, we miss them. All right, so let's move on now to part 2, happiness as a moral purpose of your life. And here, I'm going to focus on Ayn Rand's book, Anthem. And anyone who's read the book, happiness might not be the thing that jumps out at your mind when you think of Anthem. But in this case, I have the story, just briefly, is the hero names himself Prometheus. He's in a totalitarian civilization, and he escapes. And he makes it out to the wilderness, and he rediscovers the term I. And he realizes the amount of joy that it brings him. He also discovers a light bulb, invents a light bulb. But he says, I know what happiness is possible to me on earth. My happiness is not the means to any end. It is the end. It is its own purpose. Neither am I the means to any end others may wish to accomplish. I am not a tool for their use. I am not a servant of their needs. I am not a bandage for their wounds. I am a man. This miracle of me is mine to own and keep, and mine to guard, and mine to use, and mine to kneel before. So he is realizing himself out here in the wilderness. Now, what about happiness killers? He has an answer for people who don't agree with happiness and they want to rule your life. And he says, what is my joy if all hands, even the unclean, can reach into it? What is my wisdom if even the fools can dictate to me? What is my freedom if all creatures, even the botched and impotent, are my masters? What is my life if I am but to bow, to agree, and to obey? So now we're going to go to the second clip that you will not hear, but there's somebody I know who composed music based on Anthem. And he took chapter 11, which is this realization scene that I was describing, and he sang it word for word, but just playing piano as well. And it just ends with this sweeping crescendo. So that is, so far, how many different kinds of genres of art have we heard and have we seen? Well, this latest one is music that you didn't have. We have film, we have sculpture that we've seen, we have paintings. And the next one is dance. For much of my adult life, I was a semi-professional ballet dancer in New York City. And I wanted to create a ballet of Anthem. I told my friend Robin Field, I was like, this hasn't been done before, and I'm going to do it. And he said, well, you can use my music. And I was so excited, and then life happened. And that was never completed. Then, when the 50th anniversary of Anthem came out, perhaps the greatest ballet dancer ever, Rudolf Nureyev, in the introduction, says that he wanted to create a ballet out of Anthem. And Ayn Rand, he wrote to Ayn Rand for permission, and she actually said yes. And that was never completed either. Well, at this point, you might be wondering, Robert, how did you discover Ayn Rand? For much of my life, rock music has been a focal point. You saw that I mentioned earlier, I was a singer in a rock band, and that was 14, 15, 16 years old. That was like a massive passion in my life. And then I discovered a relatively unknown Canadian band called Rush. And they have an album called 2112, which is a futuristic, that's the year it takes place in. And if you can see the logo, that was kind of my motto, the man against pushing away, against the collective, the individual against the collective. And Rush based this album right on Ayn Rand's Anthem, specifically on Anthem. And Matt Kibbe in the back made an incredible video about how he discovered Ayn Rand, and he actually plays part of the album, 2112. Well, the story here is that the hero, instead of creating a light bulb, he has a guitar, and he plucks it, and he realizes the beautiful music that he can create from it. And he wants to bring this to the authorities, to the priest, and show it to them, because he's absolutely certain they're going to love this. And on the album, the lyrics, he says, I can't wait to share this new wonder. The people will all see its light. Let them all make their own music. The priests praise my name on this night. Do you think the priests actually end up praising his name? No, they crush his guitar. And he realizes, I have to get out of here. Well, when I read the album, so this is what Rush looks like themselves, and this is me at age 17 singing in a rock band. Yesterday, one of the speakers, Misha, he talked about grew up here when it was the Soviet Union, and he said it wasn't until like the mid 1980s that we heard about Led Zeppelin, and this is my Robert Plant phase, where I used to look like him and try to sing like him. So after playing the album hundreds of times, I saw inside the liner notes, it said, lyrics by Neil Peart with acknowledgement to the genius of Rand. I was like, who's this guy? So I go to the New York Public Library and I see this thin book on the shelf, and I take it out and I read it, and I'm amazed. And I say, I got to bring this to class. I have to bring this to school, because we had just read Brave New World in 1984. And I'm even using the lyrics, the Rush lyrics. I'm saying, I can't wait to share this new novel. My teacher will all see its light. So I bring it in and I say, we just read Brave New World in 1984. Can we do this one as well? And she saw the title and the author, and she said, that will never be read in my class. Have you seen those spray-painted signs about Russia? That word that they use about Russia a lot? That was what was going through my mind. Why you, blah, 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 blah. Teenagers have a real good profanity vocabulary, and that's what I was calling her in my own mind. Because she totally crushed my curiosity at this moment. In fact, for 2 solid years, I didn't even mention this book that meant a lot to me. And then at one point, 2 years later, I asked my mother, do you know who this guy is? And she said, oh, that's Ayn Rand. Oh, it's a woman. And she said, read The Fountainhead. And I read her copy of The Fountainhead, and as you know, life was never the same again. And that's one of a million reasons why I loved my mother so much. So far we've talked about how the idea of, the main idea in Anthem is this discovery of the I, and the fact that you can't have happiness without an I. And then also, if you live a life of your work, your way, as Howard Roark in The Fountainhead, you are on your way to becoming more heroic in your own life. Let's move on now to the third part, productive achievement. And here Rand says, what is productiveness? It is the application of reason to the problem of human survival. So here it means, as we said from the outset, the one faculty that we need to survive, that reasoning faculty, is essential. But Rand also says that productiveness is it's a central purpose of a person's life. Okay, so what about when things are going wrong? What about when your back is to the wall? How does productive activities and the arts, how can that inspire you? So now I want to take you to early 2004. By this time, both my parents had passed away. My New York City World Trade Center was destroyed, and I was leading a group who were trying to petition to rebuild the towers even taller, and the New York bureaucracy was shooting that down. After 6 years of being married, where every Thursday, we got married on a Thursday, every Thursday for 6 solid years I brought my wife flowers because I'm a helpless romantic, but I realized this was a mistake. I needed to get out. So instead of moping, finding excuses, and getting down on myself, I said, I need to create something. So I founded the New York Hero Society to celebrate heroism in the culture. And my goal was to show people, take people on walking tours of the outdoor sculptures in the city. And every July 4th, we would have a Declaration of Independence reading, do all these heroic things that particularly stood out with New York. But then also, we would climb to the top of a mountain called Breakneck Ridge. Sounds pretty safe, right? And at the top of that mountain, we would gather and we would celebrate our achievements, our productive achievements in life with other like-minded people. And one of the things I wanted to do is, in my decades of being around objectivists, I find that the mind is up here and the body tends to be like down here. And I'm about mind and body integration. So I want the two to be equal components in a person's life. So that's what I did with the New York Hero Society. So now we can move on to which Ayn Rand novel have we not covered? Atlas Shrugged. And with that, what adaptations were out there? The 3 movies. Anybody like them? Anyone like the Atlas Shrugged movies? But they did the one thing that Ayn Rand wanted, because when each of the 3 movies came out, there was a boost in sales of the novel. And again, her opinion was any kind of adaptation will only serve as promotion for people to go to the actual works. In November 1981, during her final speech, Ayn Rand said she plans to produce a mini-series on Atlas Shrugged. And she had written the first third of the story, part 1. Atlas Shrugged is in 3 parts. And I remember her, she would say she preferred the television to the big screen. And back then, when they had these miniseries on TV, it's kind of like Netflix, where you'd see an episode, you have to wait a full week to watch the next part of the episode of the program. And Rand liked that. I think also part of what she liked was the fact that televisions, they're more personal, they're more individualistic. You could just watch a movie in the comfort of your own home. So I remember being excited about this prospect of a movie and who potential actors would be in it. And Clint Eastwood, my favorite, was proposed as Hank Reardon, Robert Redford as John Galt, and then Raquel Welch, who took Ayn Rand out to lunch and said, "I want to play Dagny." And I think she would have been a fabulous Dandy. So this idea of Atlas Shrugged never making it to the small screen, I said, I want to do something about this. And what happened was, through my work with the New York Hero Society, I was contacted by PBS Broadcasting, and they wanted to interview me on their series called Great American Reads. They wanted me to talk about Atlas Shrugged. And I was like, where do I sign? I'm in. But I said one thing, can I invite my sweetheart? Because she teaches philosophy at Marymount Manhattan College. And they were like, we're not sure, because having couples at the same time interviewing, they tend to interrupt each other. And I felt like, I told the lady, I said, we're really in love. And we read this book all the time. And they said, okay, well, we'll let you do that, if that's the case. So, once again, without sound, we'll see a short clip from Atlas Shrugged, where they describe the novel, and they interview the two of us, and I can tell you what I'm saying here. I'm saying I first read Atlas Shrugged in 1980, and New York City was a mess. I vividly remember reading it on the subway trains, and then we'd hear that the trains have delays. And I'm saying to myself, well, this is like I'm living in the world of Atlas Shrugged. So at the end, they asked, okay, hold up the book and make a statement about voting for Atlas Shrugged. And that's what we ended up doing. And it made it to like the top 25 books that they recommended. So, closing off here on the idea of productive activity in your life. If you have that as a major purpose of your life, that can add glory to your story. And just one more painting, again by Brian Larson, which he calls First Heat, but this is inspired by Atlas Shrugged. And I renamed this. And in Romantic Manifesto, Ayn Rand says, if you take up the totality of my works and you want to summarize it in one sentence, it is to the glory of man. So we have telling your story, adding glory. We have understanding your I and how that can lead to happiness. And then we have your work done your way as a part of being heroic in your own life. Okay, I have about a couple of minutes for Q&A, and then I have a 1 minute closing note. So any questions from anyone? Yes.
Hi, thanks. So, the question I have is that most of the professors in Western academia, they are more likely to support such truly marginal ideologies as anarcho-primitivism or monarcho-syndicalism than they are to ever say a nice word about capitalism or rent, and they despise rent specifically. And I do not understand that there are some theories, of course, Nozick and why intellectuals hate capitalism and so on, but I want to ask you, what do you think is the main reason for that?
So why do academics despise Ayn Rand? And I'll tell you, my dearest Carrie Ann taught philosophy 25 years. Her students did not know her philosophy because she wanted to teach them how to think, not what to think. But the reason academics despise Rand is because she's popular. And she shows that life can be beautiful and heroic. And there's joy out there. And that conflicts with their worldview, is that we should sacrifice. And happiness is not important. It's our duty. And they completely disregard the history of the ideologies that they propose. So that comes out. And then they get these young students who are ambitious and they want to talk about Ayn Rand. And no, they want to shove down their throat other philosophers. Another question? Yes.
Thanks. Right at the beginning, you were talking about art as the product of reason.
Yes.
And how all the examples you gave were products of reason from humans. I'm just kind of wondering, is art always the product of reason? And yeah, I'm thinking like AI art. And
Okay.
in what ways can art not be a product of reason? And are there differences then between those two types of art?
Yes. So what I'll say, first of all, my point about the art, I showed art that is, first of all, like what we'll call representational. That's coming from the reasoning mind. But if you just take a paint brush and just do blips and blobs, that is not rational. And that's why I said a lot of art out there is junk. So I started with the contrast that some is beautiful coming from the reasoning mind and some is not. AI art will take me too long, I'm sorry, to talk about. So I do want to just wrap up. Two more points to make here. So we started with the news of Ayn Rand's death in New York City. So I want to finish, well, those are my questions. I want to finish with where she was buried, her funeral. She is buried 90 minutes north of New York in a town called Valhalla. And at her, now we'll talk about poetry, because there was a poem that was so important to her that she actually wanted it read at her funeral. poem is called If by Rudyard Kipling. And the final stanza, he says, if you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and everything that's in it. And which is more, you'll be a man, my son. And again, that was so important to Ayn Rand that she wanted that read at her funeral. So my final point here is, yet again from Romantic Manifesto. When I founded the New York Hero Society, I took one of her phrases, my favorite quotation from Romantic Manifesto, which you might have seen. Anyone who fights for the future lives in it today. And in closing, what I'll do is I'll just say give the full context. She asks, will we see an aesthetic renaissance in our time? I do not know. But what I do know is anyone who fights for the future lives in it today. And that's my message for you. Fight for your own future and live in it today. Thank you. Thanks.